It feels as though there's this unnecessary divide between the two big regional comic mediums, American comics and Japanese manga, when there absolutely shouldn't be. I'm sure a lot of the divide stems from comparing the often character-driven narratives of manga to the more event-driven narratives of American comics, like the Justice League and Avengers titles, which is kind of understandable. The markets are driven by very different parameters. However, the American comic book industry is not just Marvel and DC. Plenty of indie comic book publishing companies have been paving the way for strong, personal narratives and self-contained stories that allow writers and artists to flex their creative muscles on true passion projects. That's what we're going to be diving into today. For each incredibly successful manga, I'll be giving you an American counterpart that sort of matches the manga in theme or tone. My Hero Academia is inarguably one of the most popular titles to come out of the manga industry in the past decade, spawning whole spin-off manga titles as well as theatrical movie releases. Full of heart and heroes, this is one of the easiest on the list to jump from, since My Hero Academia already pulls so much influence from the American superhero comic book industry. But don't worry, I won't be recommending you read All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, even though you definitely should. No, instead, I'll recommend the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers run over at Boom Studios. I know, bear with me. The odd choice in source material aside, and the unique irony that the source material is actually Japanese rather than American, this comic story has it all. Flashy colors and action, intense character drama, all elements that build to explosive climaxes. This next one is a bit of a tough egg to crack. It's a little quirky and a little dark, but also has this really kinetic art style. Jujutsu Kaisen. It took a little bit of time for me to figure out which American title could possibly fit this unique manga, but once I landed on one, it just kind of stuck. We Have Demons. Written by Scott Snyder and illustrated by Greg Capullo, the same creative team that helmed some of the best Batman stories of all time. Greg Capullo's line work with Dave McCraig's colors absolutely pop off the page with energy, and Snyder's writing is just as intensely weird as it has ever been. While this title is much shorter than the rest, my hope is that you'll have enough interest in this creative team to go back and read something like The Court of the Owls, or even their post-apocalyptic take on Batman in Last Night on Earth. Just trust me. Next up on the list, One Piece. One Piece is kind of the gold standard for manga, right? It's a sprawling fantasy epic that's been going on since 1997 that features pirates and cyborgs and, as ridiculous as it sounds and seems, also spends even more time developing personal stories and dismantling whole government structures with real-world parallels. That's a tough one to try to tackle. One Piece is just a breathtaking masterpiece in almost every regard. And while this comic comparison doesn't have the same longevity as One Piece, at least so far, I feel as though it otherwise matches it perfectly, and is easily one of my all-time favorite narratives, period. Saga. Emotionally exhausting, with incredible character writing and an ever-expanding world, all with a strong, living political backdrop. I have cried more than my fair share while reading this story, and we are still marching along strongly. I can't recommend this title enough. This manga just blew everybody away, right? Sure, it might have been Ufotable's gorgeous animated take on the power system, but Demon Slayer exploded in popularity. I mean, its theatrical release of Mugen Train, as of recording this, is the highest grossing anime film of all time. Yes, even higher than Spirited Away. Now, unfortunately, this American comic title doesn't reach anywhere near the level of popularity of Demon Slayer, but that's just a downright shame. Monstrous is a gorgeous yet cruel tale, constantly walking a fine line between breathtaking imagery and teeth-gritting violence. Now, I know why we're all here today, let's be honest. Chainsaw Man. What American comic book title could possibly match the absolutely chaotic gem that is Chainsaw Man? Before I grant you that knowledge, let's check in with Uzumaki as a surprise title on this list. The quiet sense of horror that Junji Ito has managed to drip onto the pages of this and every other title in his massive collection has long been revered as the best of the best in horror manga. Surprisingly, there are a lot of American horror titles that pop up. It could be all that Stephen King influence, including his own son making a name for himself in the comic book industry. With all this horror, what pops out? The Nice House on the Lake, written by James Tynion, this title is full of incredibly detailed character writing with a constant sense of dread, pushing incredibly subtle humor with a surreal backdrop. Another newer, much shorter title, but fully worth your time if you're a fan of anything Junji Ito. Sorry for that detour, let's double back to Chainsaw Man. Ironically enough, this comparison title was also written by James Tynion. Tynion kind of has a chokehold in the indie market as of late, with titles like Wind, Nice House, and Department of Truth all taking up spots in the racks. He has one title though that immediately stood above the rest. Something is Killing the Children. The art by Werther just pops off the page with erratic line work and pages filled to the brim with this chaotic hellscape of a concept. Monsters are attacking children. A secret organization called the House of Slaughter are going around killing these monsters while trying to keep it under wraps. Meanwhile, our main character Erica wants to do things her own way. It's cool, it's crazy, it's heartfelt, and it's horrifically violent. Hopefully this helps any of you bridge that gap between the two markets, and even dip your toes into some of the more traditional superhero stories, as good storytelling shouldn't be confined to genre, medium, or general target audiences.